Hey, folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, we got a great show this week. There are too many topics, actually. We've just spent a while in the pre-show meeting narrowing them down for the listener, because that's how much we care, that we actually spend time. We don't just say, "Hey, Carlos, how you doing? Let's talk about this."
Yeah,
we put an outline together.
What's nice is if we're ever on YouTube, the listener could watch you on YouTube, jotting down on I'm guessing mustard stained napkin, a couple of thoughts with an old Bic broken pen. So yeah, it's a well-oiled machine, Shawn. We are humming. We're organized and committed to having a quality, composed, carefully wrought show,
where we're going to show a lot of respect for each other, as we always do, and keep it very simple. All right, how about let's start off by saying what we're not going to talk about, because we can always talk about this. We're not going to talk about Michigan State and Jim Harbaugh, even though it's at DEFCON whatever 3 at this point. We'll say it went from 4 to 3 after Harbaugh's news and Twitter blew up and the message boards were crazy. And by the way, can I just share a very quick anecdote? I know we're in we're top of the show with a rundown, and we're going to get to Lions and Tigers and all sorts of good stuff. But can I just share a quick anecdote? I thought it was funny. A producer I know on another podcast who's a huge Michigan fan and a Michigan alum, so let that be a qualifier, said for kicks and grins last week, when the news broke that Harbaugh is they're likely to get suspended for 4 games for the recruiting violations, the NCAA accusing him of lying about it, that this producer, Michigan grad, Michigan fan who tailgates every week in Ann Arbor or every home game, went on to the message boards of the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think it was 11 Warriors, the Penn State Nittany Lions. He may have gone to Notre Dame. There was one other one, and he said all of them were consistently, "I can't believe the NCAA is doing this." What's Ohio State going to say, right? Urban Meyer was suspended. I mean, Penn State has its issues, so maybe you take that with a grain of salt. But every one of the boards he went on, they had a weird little bit of, not weird, but interesting empathy for not Harbaugh so much as just, "I can't believe the NCAA. We got to stop the NCAA. They're out of control. This is ridiculous. 4 games. It's minor 2 recruiting violations." Then he gets to the Michigan State message board, and it's all, he needs to be fired. He's a liar, a cheater. It's a disgusting, corrupt university that needs to be, and it's evil. And oh my God, right? So it was just, and he went to Ohio State. So we will have plenty of time, Carlos. I know you and I both have written about it, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about it as the season goes on. But I just wanted to throw that out there. I just thought that was funny. I know that's just anecdotal evidence, but it does kind of speak to just the what's going on with Michigan State.
Nothing encapsulates that rivalry in recent years like the little brother comment. I mean, that just gets into the bone marrow of this fanaticism on both sides, of what one side thinks of the other, what triggers the other side, how, and it's like, I mean, your favorite thing, Shawn, your favorite trope is, it's like, you're like brothers. It's like family, your neighbors, I mean, how many Ohio State flags are out there, on neighbors, right, porches, but, Michigan State, green and white, maize and blue, all down the street.
Bumper stickers, personalized license plates, right?
Oh, yeah. Everything, right. You're not going to get an Ohio State license plate.
It's everywhere. You go into any store, even in Ann Arbor, maybe not the Michigan Den, the M Den up on State Street that sells all the paraphernalia and so forth, the accoutrement, as somebody in my household would say. That's about the only place you won't see any green. You go to Dick's Sporting Goods in Ann Arbor, guess what? There's Michigan State stuff in Ann Arbor.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Is it a small little spot?
Yeah, it's not. It's a lot more Michigan stuff for sure. And I don't know if that's true in Michigan State. I can't speak to that. I don't. But if the Dick's or the sporting goods stores up there, the local places probably don't. In any case, look at me. I'm already being a hypocrite.
We spent 20 minutes already on this.
I said we weren't going to talk about this, and here we are. Look, we want to get to the Lions in a little bit. We want to talk about Jameson Williams and whether he's a bust or not. I know you think he is. We want to, talk about our. Can we use the word fetish on this family-oriented show?
Careful.
Obsessions.
Our obsessions. Right now she's texting me right now. She felt a disturbance in the force.
We want to talk about our obsessions. Yours with Ben Johnson, mine with the offensive line, and have some fun with that. And just this out of control hope and hype train that, or whatever you want to call it, whatever cliche you want for the Lions.
Dan Campbell called it a hype train.
He did. He said it was getting to be, even he said, okay, enough's enough. But he's just doing that for his players. We'll get into that in a little bit and what we've seen so far at camp. We'll do that in the second section of the show. But first, Carlos, we got to get to your sport and the Detroit Tigers and how Scott Harris, I guess, deserves to be fired because he could not trade Eduardo Rodríguez.
Yeah, people are not happy, and I think I think that there should be concern. There should be, our colleague Jeff Seidel wrote a good column about this and saying that he failed his first big test was his the whole, you had one job, and his main job was trading Erod for some good prospects, and he couldn't get it done. And we don't, all the chips haven't settled into place. We don't know all the particulars, but the question is, how much was this completely in Scott Harris's control? It was the Dodgers, that's what fell through, was he was supposed to go to the Dodgers, and it seemed like it was going to happen. And suddenly, apparently, reportedly, it was a family issue, a family concern of why he didn't want to go, and he invoked his no trade clause to the Dodgers, one of, I think, 10 teams that he had in his no trade agreement. But those things get waived all the time, because, when he signed his contract, whatever it was 3 years ago with the Tigers, that was in there. Circumstances change, things change, whatever it might be. So you see that, people change, and they, when the rubber hits the road and like, all right, the clock's ticking, the trade's going to happen. What makes you comfortable? It's a discussion between the two teams, the player's agent, the player himself. What's going to happen? What needs to happen for you to be okay with waiving your no trade? And it usually happens, especially a big market team like LA with tons of money. It was odd. It was odd that couldn't happen. But so that's the question: is how much was this out of Scott Harris's control? Like, could any GM have done this? Or was it just always at the end of the day going to come down to Rodríguez saying, no, I have other concerns beyond baseball or whatever it is that are keeping me from saying I want to go to the Dodgers. So we don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know the truth behind this, if that'll ever get reported, if he'll ever talk about it. But it was hard because now what do the Tigers have, right? So they traded Michael Lorenzen for a prospect from the Phillies, but can't feel great. If you're a Tigers fan, you felt like this was a chance to take a step forward, get some prospects, look to the future. And right now, you're just left with Erod for the next, couple months. And then he's probably going to invoke his opt-out and test free agency. So it's a pretty deflating feeling for Tigers fans.
Yeah, it is. It's a layered deal for me. It's, I think about, okay, let's go back to the beginning, not the very beginning, but a report came out earlier in the week, maybe it was last week, I can't remember, that Scott Harris and the Tigers have been talking to Tampa. And our own Evan Petzold got some information that Tampa was interested and wanted Rodríguez, but they thought that Harris wanted too much in the trade, right? And a potential trade.
You think it was Erod for Isaac Paredes, hit straight up? Sorry, too soon. Sorry.
No, that would have been fun. But so we know there were possibilities out there. So Harris, this is how I look at it. Harris took a gamble. He surely could have moved Rodríguez. He could have moved Rodríguez for whatever, but he just didn't feel like he was going to get, he was getting enough in those however many early offers he had. We don't know. This is all speculation. Even the Tampa thing, you have to take a little bit of grain of salt, but because sometimes front offices leak information for their own agendas. So
absolutely.
But I think we can say fairly safely that Tampa and Detroit were talking, and there was at least some interest. I think we probably can't say anything more definitive than that, But and again, I want to preface this by saying we don't know for sure, and it's a speculation. But it seems to me that Scott Harris took a gamble and didn't like what he was getting at first in terms of the offers, and finally comes around to the Dodgers, likes what they're offering, understands they're on one of the 10 teams that Rodríguez can say no as the no trade clause, as part of the no trade clause. And that is then a second gamble. But I don't know that he would have gone through with it to the degree they went through with it. We're having conversations. The Dodgers were talking to Rodríguez's agent. I don't know if they go through with it, Carlos, or Harris does, not go through with it, but really get into the process if he doesn't think Rodríguez is open to it, right? At some point, they would have had to have gone to Rodríguez, unless Harris is a complete fool, which I don't think he is. There's no way he would have gotten that far without getting some sense from Rodríguez or his agent that he was open to it. What do you think? For starters,
I think you're absolutely right, and I think this is okay. If you want to believe that Harris knows what he's doing, first time general manager. He's not a general manager, but whatever. He is the de facto general manager. If you want to believe that he knows what he's doing, you would believe that. You believe that this is a basic part of the negotiation, is sounding out the player and his agent. Is this doable? If you don't want to believe that, if you're questioning his competency, I guess, you would wonder, was there some weird failure in the communication process where there were assumptions about this, or miscommunication about, or misunderstanding of what was important, or what could have stopped the trade, and why even start going down that road if you don't know for sure. And I don't think it's wholly. They said. Harris said yesterday in his press conference that they were in contact with him with Erod himself, phone and text, and I don't know what else, email or something, who knows what. But he made it seem like they were constantly in contact with him, regular contact with him throughout the day, maybe even from the previous night. So I don't know. It's you would think, right? If there was at all a chance that this was going to be nixed, that they would have had to have been more cautious. So it's going to be like who ordered the code red is what it's going to come down to. Who dropped the ball? Where was the communication breakdown? When did? And maybe that's when we're recording this today. Rodríguez is pitching. He's going to speak with the media afterward. We don't know how much he's going to divulge about that process. My guess is not that much. He's probably not going to get into the nitty gritty. Harris stonewalled the media, with all the questions about that. How did the process break down? What was the issue? Blah, blah, blah. And he just kept saying it wouldn't be fair. It's not fair to the Dodgers, to us, to Rodríguez to get into the communications that we've had. Sure, you don't expect him to give too much information away, but something somewhere got messed up that shouldn't have been messed up, because it shouldn't have gotten to that point. Because it makes you, if you're Chris Ilitch, you have to have your doubts about this. You have to have this. How did you not only not get him moved, but kind of look stupid, doing it? Like you couldn't get it done. You dropped somewhere, the ball was dropped. So this is how it's going to be remembered as we move forward. Unless other really important, very clear information comes out, it's going to be remembered as how did the Tigers not get this done? What was the problem here? How did they not foresee a problem that was going to stall the trade? So it's not a good look. Not a good look for Scott Harris or the Tigers right now.
No, and he's he's willing to eat that. That's interesting. That's smart too, because he doesn't want to. He's going to want to sign other free agents at some point, right? And he can't be throwing them under the bus. In fact, I think the quote was, Rodríguez or Eduardo, whatever part of his name he used, is not the villain here. Even if he is, I don't know. Who knows? But the fact that he said that, that was smart on his point, just for the future.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
Until he leaks the backstory to John Morosi or somebody else on a national level and says, "Listen, this is what really happened." He's smart.
He might do that, but players are smart, and they would understand that the front office of the Tigers still threw him under the bus. But you're right. It might eventually come out. I suppose it's possible that Rodríguez initially sort of agreed to it and then had second thoughts, had conversations with his family.
Sure.
What's a little bit interesting is that the reports are he wants to pitch and play on the eastern half of the United States. And by eastern half, I assume we're not including Arkansas. I know there's not a baseball team in Arkansas, but I don't think it's just east of the Mississippi River. I think we're talking about the Eastern Seaboard to some degree, although reports say that he actually likes it here, he's had a good year and that he likes pitching for Hinch. Even the move to sit him a few days ago so they didn't put him in an awkward spot if he got traded and he's trying to prep or whatever for his slot in the rotation. I mean, that showed some grace on Hinch's part, and I'm sure that was a conversation with Harris, or at least a text or something. So Rodriguez who knows? I mean, obviously he's going to opt out of his contract. Wouldn't that be something if they re-signed him? I think they'd like to re-sign him. At some point they can't. I was told they would like to re-sign him if it's for reasonable money, but at some point you need talent, you need players. It can't just be prospects. But to me, the bottom line is Harris took a gamble. He obviously probably could have traded him. The number of teams he could have traded him to is obviously limited. I mean, it's a third more or less because the 10 no trade clause. Of those 2/3 teams, Carlos, how many would even want to spend the money and be in a position to go get a player for a couple of months? Probably not that many. So really, what was the market Harris was dealing with? 6-7 teams, maybe
If
8
that,
teams,
if that, because
if that.
Because it's also like Evan did a good job, Petzold, explaining repeatedly how you have to have a big market team with a lot of payroll willing to absorb that risk, because if he gets hurt between now and the end of the season, he can opt into his contract 3 years at $49 million and get paid for not playing. Basically, that's a risk that you'd have to take. So I don't know if it has anything to do with a negotiation of whether he wanted an assurance of some kind of contract extension. Who knows? But but that's a risk. That's a risk that, the smaller, maybe the Baltimore Orioles don't want to take that risk because they don't have the same payroll, I'm assuming, as the Dodgers. I don't have the numbers right here in front of me, but I'm just assuming that. And teams like the Yankees are they're probably not really going to make the playoffs. So yeah, it's a small, like to your point, it's a very small group of teams that could vie for him seriously.
Yeah, right. So it's a combination of the market. Look, Harris, you could argue, and it's a fair argument, that he should have moved him, period. But what are we talking about? So what are we really talking about that they lost on? Let's talk about this for a sec. What did they lose out on? If maybe a good prospect, the Dodgers have had a really good farm system over the years, if it were the Dodgers. But if he really had to move Rodriguez, the safest way to do that was to pick a team there was no trade clause with. That number, as we just established, is way, way down from the 2022 teams, whatever it is, because of who can afford him and who would even be interested in him. So what kind of prospect are you going to get at that point without a lot of leverage? And then let's just take the math of prospects overall. And I know Tigers fans don't want to hear this and say, yeah, Al Avila made all these other deals, but Verlander didn't bring anything back. Who's brought something back over the years? You say, okay, that's the previous front office and that scouting department. But when Verlander was traded, Franklin Perez wasn't rated by just the Tigers scouting department. He was one of the best prospects in the Astros farm system. And they were one of the best farm systems or at least regarded, right? So a lot of the baseball teams thought a fair amount of some of these prospects the Tigers got, and none of them have worked out. So what just happened with the Tigers by not trading Rodriguez? That they missed out on a 20% chance to get a guy who's going to make a rotation or a lineup? Because to me, that's what it really comes down to, is that math.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. You're going to get prospects. But, at some point baseball, you got to roll the dice. I mean, you have so many people in your system. And I think that I don't remember exactly what Harris said in this press conference, but I know he spoke of the prospect that he got back for Lorenzen from the Phillies. I think he was their 5th rated prospect in the Phillies organization.
How you Lee? Am I pronouncing that right?
Lee, yeah, How you Lee, and
an infielder,
a good hitter. Supposedly, he's been lighting it up in high A, I think. So, but baseball is all about projection. You're not going to get a starting player right now from a contending team, obviously. So It's got to be a prospect. I would imagine that the Dodgers, like you said, they have such a great farm system. They would be probably able to, give Harris back some some players that they could use. And the Dodgers have Harris's philosophy on dominating the plate as for pitchers and for hitters, that traces its roots to the Dodgers system, because he comes from the Giants system, which came from the Dodgers system. And so you watch the Dodgers, and they have some of the best among hitters, at least, best plate discipline in the majors. So you could understand why that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, you got everybody's, you didn't get a prospect, and whether maybe it would have been, I haven't done the research on the Dodgers pipeline and prospects, but something tells me he would have gotten someone with a fair amount of promise.
Better odds, right? Better odds, which is probably,
that's all,
which is why he gambled to do it with the Dodgers. We can assume. I think that's a fair assumption.
Yeah.
Why he wanted to deal with LA, right?
Yeah.
To up the odds that you'll get a player who can actually do something.
Absolutely.
And I understand the fans. The people that love this team and their notion that you just got to keep taking swings. No pun intended. You just keep. You make the trade to get the prospects. You make the trade to get the prospects. You get a good player and you're not quite ready. You make the trade to get the prospects. And I understand at some point maybe you'll hit. And so from that perspective, it's a lost opportunity. There's no question. And maybe Harris will learn from this. Maybe next time he's in a somewhat similar spot, although it was a very, not unusual contract, but a somewhat rare contract. Maybe he's in a similar spot. He takes the first offer or the second offer and doesn't wait and try to get everything he wants. So he can at least take a swing, so to speak.
Well, and that's the hard spot he was in is, this is all poker, and you can't be a badass poker player if you just cave at any minute and say, well, this is all falling through. Okay, I'll take your, 120th prospect and the guy who's picked in the 20th round and some fungo bats and whatever, fine. You'll never be taken seriously as a general manager trying to swing a trade. Everybody's just going to wait you out if you're going to cave. So he can't really do that. He can't just, we got something, at that point, he's like, hey, I'm taking my ball. I'm going home. And like you said, at least every 5 days we'll have a chance to maybe win a game and, maybe put some lipstick on the pig on the record at the end of the year, and they'll win a few more games. And, and wouldn't it be insane if they won the division now with Eduardo Rodríguez?
Right. That's the thing. If they'd come out of the All-Star break and won 7-10 or 8-10 instead of losing 7-10, then maybe they're not in this position. Maybe he's not trying to shop them in the first place. And
no. He was going to shop them. There's no.
Who knows?
Yeah, trying to get into win the worst division in baseball, and then
Yeah, because when you have a chance, you take it, right? At some point. But you're the one who's always talking about, you can't build for the super future, the way down future. At some point, you just got to say, hey, we might be able to compete. Let's do it.
Well, not this year, though.
That's usually been your philosophy.
That's been my philosophy, but the difference is it's a new regime. He's got the new front office, and he's got to build it. Just for the chance to squeak into the playoffs by winning a bad division. You look at the Tigers; there's just too many problems. They just can't. They're not going to be able to compete. They're not going to be able to make a run.
They can't score. Yeah,
can't score. They can barely. Their pitching's coming around a little bit, but even that. So, yeah, this is. I do not. And if it would have been to your point, it would have been his worst nightmare to have suddenly them surging and they're leading the AL Central, and they deal Rodriguez and Lorenzen and maybe somebody else.
Yeah, right. But then it's funny because they ended up getting anything out of Rodriguez, and I know it's a bad look. It's and I understand why it's frustrating. I don't know that it's the end of the world, because if you're assuming that they would have gotten somebody that would have made a difference, and that is an iffy assumption. That's just the nature of baseball. That's not a defense of Harris. It's as much as it's just a realistic outlet of how this works. And I get it. You want as many times at the plate as you can get, and that's fair. But you're going to walk back to the dugout without touching a base a lot more than you're not.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get on to your secret favorite team, the Detroit Lions. But we need to take a quick break before we come right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carl Shawn. That would be me and you. I guess I get to say that, but then that's confusing. I don't know, man. We had a pretty good section. The segment, the first part of this podcast. I'm already trying to mess up the second one. I hope you'll forgive me. But we need to get to the Lions, man, and a few of our obsessions. Which I think the readers that read both of us on the Lions, especially you, probably know you're obsessed with Ben Johnson. Maybe aren't as familiar with my obsession with the offensive line. But before we get to either of those things and how much they matter and don't matter, I guess it all matters. You wanted to talk about Jameson Williams, which I'm not sure if he's an obsession with you or me, but you have thoughts because he's had an interesting return to practice, so to speak, not to practice, but to the full contact. His first padded practice. How about that?
Well, the thing that I want to talk about with Jameson Williams is there was a columnist in the Free Press who said he's a bust. So I want to find out who that columnist was and why he called him a bust. That was pretty harsh, I thought.
It's funny because I did write a tongue-in-cheek column the other day about Jameson Williams. And
was it tongue-in-cheek? Okay.
Yeah, it was tongue-in-cheek. And I thought to myself, I even talked to our editor, Kirkland Crawford, about what kind of response. I did not get one single email from a reader thinking that it was real, right? That it wasn't tongue in cheek. So, and I went, I tried my best to make sure that was clear. The tone is clear, but you never know because it's still writing. It's not your voice. It's not your verb. It's not speaking. So. Sometimes it gets lost in translation, but yeah, that surprised me. Nobody said, "Hey, man, what do you mean?" I didn't get any of that. I got actually some people that were angry with me. Of course, I knew I would, but
what anyway, angry about?
They feel
misled by the headline.
No. They feel like there's character issues. No, nobody was upset with that. They feel like there are character issues with Williams.
So they're mad at him, or they're mad at you for not?
No, they're mad at me for not, writing more about that, I guess. But they feel like it was a bust. I even had people saying, "Hey, Holmes has got a good track record. This isn't you can't win them all." So I was, there were plenty of people that were like, "Thank you for writing that," but there were plenty of people that are like that have clearly given up on him already, right? And it's funny at practice, I would hear whispers and murmurs among some of our. Like this guy is never going to be anything. So it's not been a great start for him. That's clear. Yes,
but,
you've written about him 10 times, so you're the expert.
He's got a tough, hill to climb. A tough road to hoe. I mean, it's you don't want. This is not how you draw the start to your career, right? And last year was not his fault. Obviously, they knew he was coming back from the ACL injury in college, and they fully understood that. And whatever, he started practicing late, played in 6 games toward the end, had a few drops, whatever. It's going to happen. An incomplete rookie season, and then just all the different things this year with the maturity questions about some of the stuff he was doing, and then now he gets a little bit dinged up. The second day of training camp, misses the first few padded practices. He doesn't have a lot of time because he's got to leave the team, after the preseason. He's going to miss the first 6 games, can't practice or can't come back and start working out with the team, I think, until after 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks. 3 weeks he can't be in the building, which is
tough.
That's an eternity for a youngster, isn't it? I mean, that's a long time.
How do you start yourself, get ready, start yourself? And he worked with Jared Goff in the spring, and they worked together with the other receivers and to work on that chemistry and the timing and all that stuff. But then it's like, boom, the season comes, go chill out, go watch TV or something. And then let's jump back into it, and you're going to be ready to go. That's a lot to ask of any young player. So it's tough for him, and it is what it is. I mean, just passionately, whether you're a fan or not a fan, and the people who are frustrated with, they traded up to get this guy, and this was Brad Holmes trying to show off how smart he is or something, whatever. I like when general managers are aggressive. I like it. I mean, that's just me. That's my personality. That's my preference of don't sit there and hope things happen and things fall to you. Now I don't, my feeling about offensive linemen, Shawn, in the first round. So, other than O linemen, like I like it. Skill position guys, whatever, you have strong conviction. And this is what's funny, by the way. I didn't get to mention this about our Tigers session, but the one thing that made me kind of chuckle, but also sad. I wasn't trying to laugh at people, but to think that, the Tigers scouting department and all the data that goes into it, all this Moneyball stuff, all this research and whatever that goes into these prospects and these guys, and it's all lined up like chess pieces. And then here comes Erod to knock it down just by saying, I got family concerns. And then it's like, okay, all that didn't matter. All the regressions we ran, all the Moneyball stuff, it's all in the toilet because it was a personal issue going on. But that's what happens, right? I mean, even in football, right? You make all these projections and this guy's going to work out and he's fast and he does this and that. And you love to write about this stuff, right? The fluid hips and all these different things. Comes down to who there's a human component to all this. And Jameson Williams, I think if he was Amon-Ra St. Brown, there'd be very little concern about this kind of stuff. But he's not that kind of player. We don't know that much about his level of commitment to the sport and how serious he's going to be to it and how that's all going to work out. It's too early to give up on him, but far too early to give up on him. But this is just a tough start.
It's a really tough start. And the thing, and you and I have talked about this privately, and I want to be careful here publicly. And I'm sorry, listener, we're not trying to.
Pat McAfee says you can say anything you want anytime.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Whatever. It doesn't matter.
I don't want you to think what I'm about to say.
We're just two friends talking to each other.
Yeah, right. That this is not authentic because it is. I just want to show some respect to another human being to some degree. And one thing I think we could say is you've talked to Jameson Williams, maybe not one-on-one, but you've been in the scrum with him. I have myself and been around a little bit. He's just, you mentioned St. Brown. I'm on Ross St. Brown. You talked to him from the minute he was a rookie. I don't remember what road game it was, and he came in after a tough loss. And I remember sitting there that God, I wish I could remember what stadium that was in. But anyway, I remember walking out of that press conference, that post-game press conference, Carlos, thinking, this guy's like, at the time he was probably 22 or whatever, 21, 22 maybe, thinking, this guy's sounds like he's 40. And that was as a rookie. And that's not Jameson Williams. You talk to him, and what do you think? And the way he kind of smiles and giggles a little bit, he doesn't seem comfortable. He seems a lot more like a lot of youngsters his age who have no idea who they are in a bigger sense. He knows he's good at football. I'm sure he's got a lot of confidence in that, but he's just immature. And I don't mean that as a criticism. He needs some seasoning, a fair amount probably. And that's what comes through more than anything else. And that's what they've got to work. I know they've set him up with, Marvin Jones a little bit, Calvin Johnson to a degree. They've got other people in the building, which is really, really good. What's he going to do those 3 weeks, though? When he's away, that's not easy. I fault the NFL for that to some degree. You want to suspend somebody, that's fine. But if you're trying to help people and get them to learn, it's like prison. You're going to send people to prison with no reading program, no education program in there, no nothing. I hate to equate this to prison, but it's a similar idea, right? I mean, what do we want to do? The NFL wants to suspend him, fine. But they should have he should be allowed in the building.
No, it's got to hurt. I mean, this is a grown man's league. It's not daycare. I don't fault the NFL for this. It's like, listen, you're going to break the rules as maybe unfair as they seem, as convoluted or whatever. It's got to hurt, or else why have rules? If you're going to, it was on the Lions.
The Hurton's not playing. The Hurton is missing 6 games. That's a fairly significant hurt. You know what I mean?
It is.
If you think somebody has an addiction or a gambling problem, you want to help them or not, right? I mean, you can do both. I mean, maybe the Lions can send somebody. I don't know, but it just seems to me that it's gambling. It's not.
I don't know. To me, I don't have a problem with it, but I can see that if you, I don't know, let them do everything else and practice and work out and everything else, so that after 6 games, boom, 7th game they hit the ground running. Like maybe they will. Maybe Williams will be the poster child for this, and he'll be the test case of maybe this is a little bit too extreme. But I think with the NFL is they wanted it to hurt, because they do not want. It's a weird incestuous relationship they have with the gambling houses.
It's totally true.
They have to be really careful. And I think that this speaks to the level of seriousness with which the NFL takes these rules, and they do not want people messing around with this and gray areas and stepping over the line. So it's like, this is going to hurt. You're going to do this. It's not going to just be a slap on the wrist. So I don't fault them for this, because there's so many people already who have conspiracy theories about the NFL and gambling to begin with. You throw into doubt all this, well, he can just be away from the team or whatever. Honestly, that maybe if it's not going to hurt that much, oh well, I'll tiptoe. I'll see if I can get away with putting a bet online while I'm at the facility. Who's going to know? Whatever. I mean, it needs to be a high profile punishment. It needs to hurt. I don't have a problem with it. I see your point. It's hard, especially with a young player in this circumstance. If it was an established player, it's like, hey, this is a 6-week vacation. I'm good.
No, for sure. For sure. And they know how to take care of their body. That's another thing too. You think about being away and from the rhythm, coming back out, it just seems like a recipe to get hurt, which is why which is why I'd bet they're not making them be away for the whole 6 weeks, because at that point it could be physically dangerous, right?
It's absolutely true. And if, no pun intended, but if I were a betting man, I would bet he's going to get hurt. It's going to get hurt. It's going to be something. It's going to be it's not a good recipe for, and that's the question. Is like, we don't know this about Jameson Williams, but when you talk to him, and you can watch the videos on the Lions website of all his press conferences and things, and he doesn't seem aware of how serious this league is, how quick they are to just cut you off. He feels to me like he's not unique. A lot of young players who are drafted first, second round, they've had amazing arcs to their career. They've been amazing. Everybody's told them they're amazing. They are amazing. They have great talent. And they think this is just never going to end. I'm just going to be a great player. I'm always going to be fast, young, quick, talented. It's never going to end. And they don't realize how close they are to losing their job all the time, to being, gotten rid of and replaced. I mean, it's not for long, right?
It can turn in a hurry, right? It's interesting with Williams, because he's had, from what it's been reported and what we've learned, had some tough circumstances growing up, which is
a lot of players.
They do, no, for sure, and that's not an excuse necessarily. You're talking about having somebody tell you you're great all the time, and maybe he did. He couldn't play. He couldn't get on the field at Ohio State, and went to Alabama and busted out at Alabama. So I don't know that he's always been. I mean, I'm sure he's really frustrated with Ohio State. It's probably why he left. But there are a couple of football things with him too, and I think that's part of. You mentioned, if he would look like St. Brown or sounded like St. Brown. And that speaks to some other issues too, which we don't need to get into right now, but that he might be viewed differently. I also think there's a football aspect of this. A couple of them. One is, it doesn't look like he's timed up with Goff.
Right.
And that was written about the other day in practice. Even when apparently beats C.J. Gardner-Johnson, to the point where it kind of went viral a little bit about how he basically made follow the turf. He got off the line so well. And that was a skill of his at Alabama. But then once he was in the open, the route timing and precision wasn't there, and it didn't end up in a completed pass. I don't know that it was Goff throwing that particular ball, though. So that's one thing, right? The timing. But the flip side of that, Carlos, I'm curious what you think, is he has shown, and our colleague, the great Dave Burkett, wrote about this the other day. He made a great, apparently, downfield block to spring, I want to say, Jahmyr Gibbs open for a long gain. This is a padded practice. And that was something Holmes talked about draft night. And that was one of the reasons the Lions liked him, that his toughness on special teams, his willingness to get out there, sacrifice body and block. That's the kind of football stuff. That's partly why they drafted him, right? It wasn't just the speed. They thought this guy can play football. You and I joke about that all the time. Is he a football player or not? Well, they thought he was. And the fans just haven't seen enough of that. If they saw more of that, do you think they'd be, okay, let's give him time to grow up in other ways if they see the footballness on the football field?
Yeah, it'll help give him the benefit of the doubt. And Williams talked about that himself is, your boy, Ben Johnson, he invoked him and said, his saying is no block, no rock, and,
That's right.
and that's good.
That's a great saying. Isn't that a great saying?
Great saying. And that's, that's the thing that, yes, he's taking this to heart. Obviously, it's not a concern of the Lions have to, hey, man, he's got to do a better job blocking. It's not just like, if you're not getting the ball, it doesn't matter. You got to be a better blocker. That helps the whole team, the whole offense. Can't just be selfish. That does speak to that. I like the other day, he got a little bit of a skirmish with one of the DBs.
Starling, was it? Or Sterling?
Sterling Marlin, yeah. He was, and that's great. I mean, the guy was probably talking some smack to him and stuff, and now he's got to control that a little bit. But it's camp, it's heated, you're banging around, so.
And he had a couple drops right to that point, so he was frustrated, which is a good sign.
Good sign. Can't let it get under his right. You can't. He's going to get. When he gets on the field, there's going to be so much gambling, smack talk, and this and that, and whatever. It's going to be tough for him. He's got to learn how to deal with that. That's just how it's going to be. But I like the passion. I like that, he's not just letting it happen and not doing anything about it. So there's some good signs for Jameson Williams. He's got a big challenge ahead of him. And I'm sure the Lions are going to be very prepared to give him a plan. And, I don't know, maybe he'll move in with Calvin Johnson or something, and, he'll rent out a room or turn his mansion into an Airbnb for Jameson Williams and hang out with him. And they'll have, they'll have avocado toast every morning and go over, training regimens and different things, different things that they can do to help each other. But yeah, it's going to be weird. And, the preseason will tell us a little bit more, although I don't imagine Jared Goff is going to play much. It'll be curious to see how much Jameson Williams plays. I would figure he should get a fair amount of action, but yeah, he's got a lot ahead of him.
He does. You mentioned Ben Johnson. You wrote a column about Ben Johnson and argued that the whole season, I'm exaggerating here, of course. You basically argue the whole season depends on him, and they need to get it done now because he'll be gone at the end of the year. And
that's what I wrote, exactly.
And football coaches matter more than any other team sport, at least in this country, and that talent doesn't matter that much. And you used Bill Belichick.
I didn't say talent doesn't matter. I just said coaches matter more.
But you sort of implied it when you used Bill Belichick and Mike Dick as your examples, both of whom have not won without talent. But did you mention Tom Landry too?
Yeah.
Okay. But in any case, so let's okay, that's fine. Readers saw that. They were perplexed by it, the examples, which they should have been. But they're like, Carlos, you're undercutting your own argument. No, but so let's, you can ask me the same thing about the offensive line, but let's talk about your, let's put you on the couch for a second. You do the same to me. What's the obsession with Ben Johnson?
The obsession is we have not seen an offense like this at least from the time I've been watching the team, living in Michigan. We just haven't seen an offense like this, an offensive coordinator like this. He's so innovative, calls a great game. He has that just little genius, quirkiness to him. So there's just he has that it factor as a play caller, and he's going to be gone after this season. He should have been gone after last season if the Panthers thing hadn't fallen through. So he's gonna. You got to enjoy it. You got to. And unlike the Tigers, the time is now for the Lions. I mean, they've got to seize on this. And it's going to be a fascinating offseason after he's gone, and what they do with Jared Goff, and what happens to Hendon Hooker, or if they move on and get another quarterback, who knows? Maybe maybe Teddy Bridgewater comes in. He's the number 2 at some point, and who knows? There's a whole lot of moving parts or potential storylines that could change things. But it would be, I think that you have to feel. I mean, everybody talks about, and it is definitely a concern with the defense, the secondary, what's going to happen in the linebacking ranks, everything, right? And your favorite obsession is offensive line. Oh, this is 5 Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Famers, whatever, all that stuff. Great. Because there's a kicking competition. Great. Who knows? That's important too. But to me, everybody just assumes the offense is going to be really good again. I assume it. I think everybody does. You should. But he is the key to making that happen. It's not. I mean, he had 1 year as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller, and he lit the wool on fire. So top 5, I think, in points and yards. And it was fun. It was a fun offense to watch. Also, it wasn't boring. It wasn't. I mean, if you had your way, if Shawn Windsor could be offensive coordinator, it'd just be between the tackles, up the middle. Let's give it up the middle to whoever, some fullback guy. And,
I have a question for you. Do offensive lines also block for the quarterback, or is it just try to open holes for the running back?
Jameson Williams blocks. That's what he does. It's
It's funny. I didn't realize that offensive lines only were there for the running back. Silly me. I thought they were there for the quarterback too. But I guess I was wrong.
I don't know. It's 5 globs of the worst athletes on the field who are.
I got a lot to learn.
Or pushing and shoving each other every down. So yeah, it's great.
Well, I can tell you what, that offense last year, and if they're good this year, it's the thing, I don't know how good Jared Goff is. It's hard to know. He played really well last year, but you can be darn sure without that line, and Ben Johnson certainly is not getting calls. And it's also not an accident. I mean, sometimes you find steals and so forth, but it's not an accident. They got 3 first-round picks on that line. They got one of the best lines in the league. Unless you have Patrick Mahomes, although Kansas City has a good line too, but unless you have Mahomes or, I don't know, Aaron Rodgers in his prime, or potentially Josh Allen and Justin Herbert. If you don't have a line, I mean, maybe Jalen Hurts is getting there too, but you're just talking about a handful of guys. Is Goff one of those guys? Probably not.
No,
he's not. So that's another reason, they've got that. To me, that line makes all of this possible. But where I would disagree with you is, they were rolling up points in the first half of last year. And it didn't matter. They were 1-6. So unless that defense
was terrible.
Yeah, it was. It was awful. And unless that defense is going to be at least decent, then Ben Johnson, it doesn't matter what he does.
Well, he has to score points, because it's not going to be a great defense. It's at best going to be a mediocre defense.
It needs to be mediocre.
So that offense they have to rely on that offense. That's like the baseline. Table stakes with that offense is it has to be excellent. That's table stakes for the Lions. If this team's going to do anything.
I don't know that they have any great players on offense. Maybe St. Brown becomes one. I mean, who knows? Maybe he could become the best non-deep threat receiver in the game. I mean, he's got that kind of potential. And you would say that's a great player for sure. But do they have any great players?
Well, if you want to count offensive linemen, I mean, I think Penei Sewell.
Yeah, exactly.
Jonah Jackson was a Pro Bowler a couple of years ago.
Dave Burkett would argue that there are plenty of people, you're right, that argue that Sewell is the most talented player on offense, for sure. You're right. But
for his position, Ragnow, if Ragnow stays healthy, excellent.
He's really good too. Yeah.
And they had TJ Hawkinson. They had a Pro Bowl tight end. They got rid of him. So
yeah, and Laporta's got potential as a pass catcher. We'll see if he can, as Ben Johnson likes to say, no block, no rock. Let's see if he can block.
It's a steep learning curve for tight ends.
That's why they got rid of Hawkinson. In this offense, your guy likes blocking.
He does like blocking, but I mean, TJ was never that big of a guy. He was not going to be. I mean, that's right. Maybe he doesn't fit his system the way he wanted him to. He was a willing blocker, but just not an inline guy. But that's why they had, Brock Wright and some of the other guys. Is if you want inline block, they just couldn't do as much offensively. But if they made such a hard effort to make sure they got that, whatever it was, that Lions single season record for touchdowns for tight ends, just so that, Ben Johnson could, flout it to everybody else. Like, see, we got rid of our Pro Bowl tight end, but we still produced offensively with our tight end group.
Well, he did. He's your guy. He's your guy. It's going to be fun, man. And we're going to have lots to talk about. And let's hope they don't start off 1-6. So we can still have a podcast in the newspaper. Because, it's funny. I've started getting, I wrote this, we talked about this the other day. There's this thing about, I can't even remember what it was, Carlos, about fan expectation. Of passing the Lions passion and love down to your kids, and the Lions is a family heirloom, and so on and so forth. And several of the responses I got were, if the Lions are bad this fall, it's going to hurt worse than it ever has. Because there's so many people that are kind of starting to believe, or at least allow themselves to actually really hope in a way. And so for their sake, we don't want that suffering, do we?
No, it's all hope and hype, Shawn. And you've been the conductor on the hype train. So I think they should come after you.
Well, okay, they can do that. We got to take advantage of it while we can, because we could be back in a 3-14, 2-15 stretch in a second. You know how it goes. But
they won't go 1-6. They'll just go 1-5, and then JMO's going to come in, and then they'll win out. So it'll be fine.
Well, that would be fun to write about if that happened. We can agree
this
on
offense was Jameson Williams the whole time.
That's right. Wouldn't that be awesome? All right, let's take one more quick break and get back to finish this show. What do we call the show? Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. It's time to wrap the show up, Carlos, which means it's time for your favorite thing. Not mine.
I guess I'm going solo, but so my favorite thing was an odd thing, and it's hard. Maybe it's not even the favorite thing, but it was definitely a unique experience. But recently, with the storms that popped up last week, and all the craziness that ensued, it was a very trying time. As you know, Shawn, I'm going through some real estate shenanigans on top of all that. And,
you're a magnet. You're a magnet.
I'm a magnet. I cannot even begin to tell you.
Trump. You're a young Trump.
I can't even begin to tell you how challenging the whole thing was. But it all ended up with us, my wife, my 2 kids, and my dog, about a 90-pound collie named Delilah, having to go like hobos from, I guess hobos don't go to hotels, but we felt like hobos going to hotel to hotel. I think we stayed in 3 different hotels over 3 nights. It was insane. It was difficult. It was one of the more challenging 3 or 4 day periods of our life without, forget the power. Everybody was going through that, but just having to be itinerant, moving around, displaced. It was so difficult, but through it all, it was fun to be able to share that with my family, to have that experience. And it's the kind of thing with it, as you know, as your kids get older, you're going to remember this. It's one of those touchstone moments in your family history. And we're going to recall how we were trying to get the Roku to work so we could watch What We Do in the Shadows TV series on Hulu, and the password, and going through that and why it wasn't working, and the dog barking and taking her out to try to go potty and all these different, just the insanity of it all, Shawn. It's something that we will not forget in our family, but there was a lot of fun and really made me appreciate how we're so used to the comforts of our lives, and I'm a very privileged person, and I guess it doesn't take much to throw a privileged person off kilter. And so I try to appreciate that a lot of people have it a lot harder than I do, but it was such a crazy time that it's finally, we're getting back to some normalcy. So I'm really glad to be with you and Robin this week. It was a nice return to the familiar, and I really missed it, but I appreciated the experience.
As Tom Izzo would say, normalcy.
Normalcy.
Yeah, that's what he says. That's what he says for normalcy. I've always liked that. Yeah, we recorded a week ago on a Wednesday, and if I'm not mistaken, an hour later the power went out, or something like that. It wasn't I think that was the timeline. I have a couple of quick questions. Did you have 2 rooms, or did you all stay in one room?
It was so insane that we were so desperate to get out of here that my wife and kids went to the room. They just checked into one room because it was too hard for the dog, and we couldn't figure that out. It was such a desperate moment. And I said, I'm just going to stay in the house with the dog. It'll be fine. It's not that bad. I'll deal with it. And I just kept looking at the temperature and it kept getting stickier. So that night, I checked into a separate hotel at like almost midnight with the dog by myself. And then we all kind of, the next day we combined. And my one daughter asked, why do we have separate? Why do we have 2 rooms? Why couldn't we just stay in the other hotel room where it was nice and quiet without a dog? Like, well, it's $200 a night. So, that's why. Or we're gonna cut some expenses as much as we can. And by the way, if you've never checked into a hotel around here, it's $75 a night to have a dog. And
wow.
Yeah, this is at least our friendly, and hey, the hotel staff did a great job at the Hampton Inn. They were inundated with people rushing away and getting away from. I think a lot of people tried to stick it out the first night, but they did a great job. However, their philosophy, their policy was $75 a night for your pet. After 4 nights, it kicks up to $125 a night. So if the high cost of pet ownership was really being felt by a lot of people, I think. And we weren't the only ones for the dog. We could hear some other little crying and yelping and barking.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, that's a good story, and I'm glad you got through it. My favorite thing is when the power came back on, and I'll leave it at that. We take
another one, yeah.
We take modern life for granted, and when that power finally came back on after 3 days or whatever it was. Yeah, it was great. I'm sure for a lot of people. And I felt grateful, too, because I know people, even just in the larger neighborhood that I'm in across the road, it took another day and a half for them. That's just random, literally across the one of the roads, kind of the main roads that goes to the neighborhood. It's really, you just don't know. I remember at one point, DTE had something on their website that said, okay, a Q&A, and one of them was, well, why are the lights on across the street? Why do they, and mine
grids?
Yeah, right. No, for sure. Exactly. Different grids. Even sometimes, across the street.
We literally had that. And this has always been the case. Literally, the house across the street from us, one of our dear neighbors for 20 years, it's always been that. It's like a little island, and when we've had power, she hasn't had power sometimes. And this time it was reversed. She got power within a day. And we're sitting there saying, what is going on? We understood different grids. But I think I'm surprised because I know you also were without power, but you apparently have an 8 million kilowatt private rich person generator. So I don't know why you left your house. I mean, was it just not?
No.
Couldn't get it down to 60 on the AC or what?
No, we don't have that kind of generator. We don't have a Generac that runs on natural gas. A $15,000 generator. We don't have one of those. We have a small little portable generator that we got after the ice storm in the winter. We used to lose power all the time. And DTE over the last 5-6 years did a lot of tree cutting, and it has made it better, but it's been bad this last year. And we thought, okay, it's funny, Carl's, and I don't know, we want to get out of here and get the listeners out of here, but I do remember a time when you heard a generator and you're like, what is that? I'm not going to use the word. What's that jerk with a generator? Who do they think they are? Can't they survive? Right? Do you remember when I was young and you heard a generator? You're like, what kind of apocalyptic militia type is over there with that generator? You know what I mean? But now we're so reliant on Wi-Fi and the internet, just everything. That more and more people have generators. So when power goes out, I hear them all over the place now. It's just a lot more common. And anyway, we broke down and bought a portable one. Well, we don't have what's called a transfer switch where you can plug the generator, goes directly into your circuit box, basically. And then you can run and turn off circuit breakers from there to kind of keep it under a certain amperage. But ours is not powerful enough for the AC. And we don't have that transfer switch, which we're going to do here before the end of the summer. So we really just ran our fridges. We ran 2 extension cords for the fridges. But it was hot. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. This, I know we got to get out of here, but I do have a question since we're talking about this. Is, as I told you, across the street, literally across the street, they had power a full day before we had power, and I would come home to check on the house and to move some stuff around or whatever it was, and is it poor form for, it's not our friend but another neighbor, is it poor form for that side of the street for them to have power, and for someone who has power literally across the street to have power and kind of be flaunting it by doing some yard work and turning their lights on, and as the other side of the street is dark and people are without power? Poor form or not? Is it just, I have power?
I don't think so, because we would often lose power and there'd be other people that would have power. Our neighbors have had a generator for several years, and they have the transfer switch, which allows you to power your furnace. Say if it's in the winter, it won't. I don't know that it quite does an AC, and AC is, but it'll run a lot of your house, and which makes it a lot more inhabitable. But they did it because of a sump pump, and they'd lose power sometimes in a heavy storm, and their backyard would flood. And they didn't have that pump. Their basement, the lower level would flood, so that's why they broke down and got a generator. Because a couple of times they've had floods and then had to rip out drywall and big expensive repairs. But I remember during the ice storm, I'd look over there and their house was all lit up and it was warm.
No, but so here's the difference.
You know what
this
I mean?
is what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, if you have a generator or you have power, of course you're going to have your lights on. You're going to have your AC going, no problem. You're just going about your life. But, washing your car, trimming your hedges, like la-di-da, life is so great.
That doesn't bother me.
Why not get a lawn chair out, turn on some power, some music, and the electric grill maybe, and have some martinis or whatever. I mean, come on.
That doesn't bother me. I guess if they were out, if you were out of power for a couple of weeks or something, or a week, like when we had the blackout back in the early 2000s, that and somebody around in a little island had power and they were out there sunning or doing whatever you're saying, that might be a little bit different. But no, it doesn't bother me.
Okay,
I don't worry about it. I mean, good for them; they got power.
You are such a forgiving person. Okay,
I don't think it's personal.
How forgiving you are.
They're not. It's not personal. They're not trying to do anything to you. That's their lot at that point. That'd be like being upset when somebody pulls across the street with a much nicer car, which happens all the time. I don't care.
No, that's not the same.
They have the means for,
That's the same if you have a car, it blows up in your driveway, and then somebody pulls up in a Lamborghini and starts doing, donuts, and they're like, boy, it's time to have a great car.
Well, the donuts would be, I don't know. Somebody's out there trimming their hedges and they happen to have power. I don't think that's anything other than just taking care of their business. Good for them for trimming their hedges.
And I do believe this neighbor, like the person is not a jerk, and we share power. We've done this with neighbors for a long time. Run an extension cord if you need something, whatever. But it was just a little off-putting to feel like you were the have-nots and the haves over there.
Yeah, I don't worry about it.
I would just tone it down. That's all. If it were me, even if my wife said, hey, we should cut the grass, like, I'm not doing that while those poor people don't have power. I'm not turning extra lights on. I'm not. And the funny thing about this was we have those solar lights, landscape lights in the front. They're just solar, obviously. But if you drive by the house, it looks like we have power because those lights are on. And I think people hopefully would understand, like, yeah, they don't have power. And we're not the only ones.
Yeah, no, I don't know that there's that much envy in those situations when it's just a few days. I think, it doesn't bother me. That doesn't bother me at all. By the way, and we need to wrap this up, the DTE trucks have been out on my street this whole time, and I've been worried that, and I meant to mention this at the top of the show, that I could just go away at any point if they cut the power, because before the power outage last week, they had been in the neighborhood the previous couple of weeks just doing infrastructure, repairing transformers, or updating them, cutting some trees. They're, so we got through it. They didn't cut the power. I don't know if that's good or bad. Maybe it should have been cut. But anyway, all right, my man, we've been here way too long, and that's probably my fault. It's always my fault, which is fine. I'll do my best to get better. We need to thank. Let's get through this. We need to thank Robin, my man Robin, right?
Robin Chan, Mr. Chan. Come on, man.
What would? Oh, is it Mr. now?
Mr. Chan. I show respect to our people who butter our bread.
I was just going to say, let's thank Robin, Kirk, Anjanette, and Nicole. How about that?
Wow.
We're trying to make this efficient.
Yeah, that's good. Let's get out. You're right. Let's
start doing that from now. Can we start doing that? Robin, Kirk, Anjanette, Nicole.
Let's ask them.
All right. Those would be Robin Chan, the producer, who makes this possible for us to podcast. Kirkland Crawford, the sports editor. Anjanette Delgado, the managing editor, and Nicole Avery.
I think what's her title? Editor.
Oh, Gannett. Okay, whatever.
It's
Nicole's in charge.
She's the editor.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's just Gannett is okay. That's not cool. But anyway, they make it possible. We just say that because we make it possible. We're the ones sitting here talking.
This is our last show. Yeah, Robin cut the whole whining thing about the power. It's going to be a 28-minute show.
Obviously, it doesn't happen without Robin. You know what I mean? Obviously, Robin's with us. He's part of the working crew over here.
When this thing gets actually posted, it's going to be an edit saying I'm not with them, and then
hopefully this will all get cut. You can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast, at Apple, Spotify. Subscribe, please. Rate us. Let us know what you think, and thank you for listening. What else, Carlos? I know we usually share that, and I just got through it. Sorry.
No, thank you for listening to the final episode of Carlos and Shawn. We'll see you in another incarnation, another
great
podcast.
We may or may not be next. We may or may not be back next week. Right? So tune in to see. No, I'm kidding.
We'll see. What Nicole thinks.
We'll be back next week with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn.